Okay, I am here with Jordan Davidson with ADP today. We're going to be talking about the Payroll Tax Deferral Program, as well as the PPP program, and just sort of educate our viewers on the latest updates to those two programs and some other things that businesses could look to for help with human capital. Let's dive right in, Jordan. President Trump in August, so he initiated the payroll tax deferral.
Right.
Why don't you just give a little bit of background on what that is, and just explain that a little bit more, what that does.
Yeah, sure. So many of your viewers may have read the presidential memorandum about that. A bit of an add-on to the other legislation that's come about to help small businesses and to keep their employees and to save money. The payroll tax deferral specifically is speaking to the employee and employer portions of Social Security. And so the payroll tax deferral is applicable to employees with wages subject to Social Security taxation under $4,000 on a biweekly payroll, or the equivalent amount for employers that are paying on a semi-monthly basis or a monthly or a weekly basis. And so the employees pay they see on their pay stub a 6.2% Social Security tax on their wages, and that does have a limit, and that limit is $137,700 in the year 2020. So, for example, an employee earning $137,700 or more would pay $8,537.40 in Social Security taxes in this year, 2020. And obviously that's being facilitated by their employer or their employer's payroll provider in that withholding, paying, filing of those taxes. And so employees also pay that 1.45% Medicare tax, but that's not affected by this payroll tax deferral memorandum.
Okay. So what are then the implications for employers and employees with this memorandum?
Yeah, so one of the things that, we've started fielding questions like, what's changed? And not really anything has changed with the underlying law, right? So the presidential memorandum and treasury notice, nothing changed that way. Your employers are still liable for employment taxes, whether or not they withhold the taxes from the employees. The treasury notice confirmed that employers remain liable to collect from employees and pay taxes deferred under the presidential memorandum. So it's in the name, right? It's a deferral. So in between September 1st and through the end of the year, when this memorandum went into place, those will still have to be collected on a similar rate between January and April.
Okay. So what are employers doing? Are they actually on your end? Are they withholding right now? And just because it still has to be due, and the employee has to make that up, right?
Right. Yeah, and that's where what really everyone's asking is, what's the risk here, and is it worth it to do this payroll tax deferral? Because yes, any taxes deferred between this period, right, September 1st from the end of the year, is going to have to be paid back at the end of the payback period, January through April. Right, so you are going to have to then withhold on a similar rate through that pay period, which means that employee hopefully is still with you, because even if they're not with you, you still have to find a way to collect from that employee. And so failure for an employer to withhold and pay the amounts by April 30th will result in accrual of interest penalties in additions beginning on May 1st. But there is some verbiage in this legislation. The treasury notice does allow for an employer to make arrangements to otherwise collect, say if an employee leaves your organization or what have you. So what we're telling our clients a lot is, it's great to offer this to your employees. You're letting them know that this is available for them. But I would look at the nature of your workforce, to determine if it's really worth it.
Okay. So in the short term, this end of this year, it gives employees a little bit more money each January through April 2021.
It will mean that. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. And what if an employee says, "Hey, I want this," can an employer say, "No, we're just going to go business as usual because we don't want to be on the hook"?
Yes, an employer is not. They don't have to. I should say, defer their portion, but they do have to honor the employee's request.
Okay. Okay. Good. All right. Well, that's good information.
And that actually kind of leads. So there is the option for, because the employer portion of that same amount, that 6.2%, is the same. There is the option for the employer to defer their portion of that as well through the same.
Oh, there is. Okay. Well, that's good to know. All right. So the employer could, if they need it, could keep a little bit extra money in their pocket as well. But that's
Correct.
what we do. Okay. Well, great. And who knows, maybe legislation passes that it gets forgiven. I mean, that's kind of what people are looking for these days.
Nice, like the PPP loan.
Yeah, exactly, which leads into the PPP. So maybe give our viewers just a little bit of, I'm sure most people know what the PPP is,
Yeah.
But maybe just give a little bit of history on that and tell us what the latest updates on the PPP are.
Yeah, I imagine that a lot of the people listening applied and received their PPP loan dollars, and it was a mix of, in terms of the experience that they had with that. And so if you received that loan, you also should have been notified by your SBA lender of the forgivable nature of that loan, but also the payback for that loan. So there have been several legislative proposals in Congress to either further expand, simplify, or extend the PPP program, including proposals that could authorize a second PPP loan down the road for qualifying businesses, which we'll keep an eye on and send out our Eye on Washington legislative updates on that. On October 8th, the Treasury Department and Small Business Administration released a simplified Payroll Protection Program forgiveness application. Specifically, this is applicable to loans of $50,000 or less. And what that really means, a lot of verbiage, that the requirements for targeted full-time equivalent, wage level maintenance requirements, and what those dollars were spent on, no longer has to be applied to those loans of $50,000 or less. So it's a lot easier to get a loan of $50,000 or less completely forgiven right now with the new application form. And it's the form 3508S. You can pull it from the IRS, or we can share it after this with you all.
Okay. And so are some of your clients already applying for forgiveness?
Yeah, absolutely. They are, because they're nearing, a lot of our clients are nearing the end of their time of usage for their PPP loan dollars, right?
Okay. Are there any, so in terms of forgiveness as of today, if it's under 50,000 and it's already been exhausted, then go ahead and apply.
If it's under $50,000 or less and you've exhausted those funds, use that new application, and you won't have to require the same documentation that a borrower of more than that would have to get it forgiven.
Okay. So the main difference at this point between someone that got a PPP loan for under 50,000 and someone that got it for over 50,000 is the documentation and the application that needs to be submitted to get forgiveness. Okay.
Yeah. There's more requirements for those that borrowed more than 50,000.
Okay. So what are some things that you're telling your clients to know about the PPP loan forgiveness?
Yeah, there's some angst and there's always some stress in terms of deadlines or timelines to get this done, to make sure they're doing it right. And a lot of that is just making sure you have the right reporting right in your system. If you're outsourcing payroll, most payroll providers should be providing updated packets for you that make it really easy to kind of track and make sure you're on pace to get that forgiven, along with how you're spending those dollars. But there really isn't a fixed deadline for borrowers to apply for forgiveness. However, there are some key timelines to know. Borrowers have 10 months from the end of their applicable covered period or alternate payroll covered period to apply for forgiveness, or they will have to begin repaying their loan with an interest rate of 1%. At the beginning of this, a lot of people were like, 1% money is great money. That's basically free. But those are the timelines to get that forgiven. Loans issued on or after June 5th of this year have a maturity date of 5 years. Interest accrues from the origination date and must begin repaying their loan. The PPP Flexibility Act provides that loan recipients can defer repayment of principal and interest of the PPP loan until the time when the SBA compensates their lender. So really what we are telling a lot of our clients is to just check with your lender to determine if they're currently accepting forgiveness applications at this time.
Okay. So a question is, let's say I'm an employer. I got a loan for $45,000, and I got it back before June 5th, and so I apply for forgiveness, and let's suppose I get forgiveness. Am I forgiven on the interest as well that may have accrued during that time, or who pays the interest? Is that the SBA going to pay the lender that interest, or do you know how that works?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. That's probably more of a question for the SBA lender who gave you that loan.
Okay. All right. And do you know what the maximum loan forgiveness is?
Loans under the PPP program are 100% forgivable. So there isn't a maximum. It's just provided that those certain conditions are met, right? So if we're really talking about a borrower of more than $50,000, loan proceeds must have been spent or qualifying costs incurred within the applicable period, which is 8 to 24 weeks, right, following the receipt of your loan. And 60% must have been spent on payroll costs, and no more than 40% spent on certain specified non-payroll costs. And forgiveness may also be impacted by reductions in employees and employee wages. And so it still is not an overly difficult application process to get loans over $50,000 incurred. It really has to do more with, at least in some portion, the reporting capabilities of your current payroll provider.
Okay. So before we shift gears and talk about more things with payroll and HR and things like that, is there anything else that viewers should know about the PPP loan and the forgiveness process?
Not necessarily. There's a lot of great resources out there. I would for sure talk to your payroll provider. You're more than welcome to come talk to ADP. We'll give you all the information you need. And between that and the combination of your lender, you should be in really good hands to get your loan forgiven and make sure that you're in the best financial position possible.
Great. Okay. Very useful information. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about. You're in the business of outsourced payroll and HR, and so maybe there's going to be with our viewers. Businesses that do it in-house and some that do outsource it. Can you talk about the differences between the two, maybe advantages and disadvantages of the two?
Yeah, keeping with the same topic of the payroll tax deferral program that we started with, outsourcing payroll to a provider like ADP, or there's a lot of good ones out there. I'd never say ADP is the only one, but that likely guarantees more accuracy and system just capabilities to track new legislation and make sure that your system is automated to handle that and the changes necessary to it, right? Because of all this legislation, there's a brand new 941, right, which is a quarterly filing. And a lot of times, if you're using an in-house system, those systems aren't always equipped to be up to change on those new requirements, right? And so really the value in outsourcing is just shifting that liability for the form creations, that they're accurate, the filings, the payment remittances, and just keeping you in compliance.
Right. Yeah. It's what you guys do full time. stay up to date on those things.
Right.
Well, okay. So then how does a payroll provider, how does it affect other systems within a company?
Yeah. So payroll, I always say it's thrown out politically, but it's kind of that pain epicenter for so many different things, right? Payroll is, it's a commodity and it can easily be done, right? But it has its kind of tentacles in a lot of different areas. And I would say specifically when we're talking to, like a retail business, restaurant, what have you, from your point of sale system to your back end accounting, payroll always comes into play. And it really can either be a useful bridge or a cumbersome, issue between the two of them. And outsourcing often provides the bi-directional integrations that you need between those two systems to sync data, right? Employee data points are often housed, certain aspects of those are often housed in different, in multiple systems. And so if you can automate that data sync to make sure that it's always current and that they're talking with one another, then it's going to save you time and it's going to remove manual processes and free you up to, focus on the more revenue generating aspects of your business.
Absolutely. And I know that, we represent a lot of franchise systems, and one of the things that, we talk to people about when they're looking to franchise their company is saying, okay, what are your margins? At the end of the day, how much are you taking home? And if they don't have, their overhead well documented and under control, then it's hard for them to know. Sometimes people guess, and that makes it risky to move forward with franchising, because a franchisee is going to be paying a royalty on top of everything, all the other expenses, and it just, and so every percentage point matters. And so if it's well documented and they're using a company like an ADP that's got it all systematized, that will help them be able to know their data points to make that decision.
Right. And I would say too that with franchise, we understand specifically in within ADP, the importance of single point of contact for that, right? So that your franchisees are having a consistent experience and you can depend on a certain cost or a pre-negotiated price for a system, and the capabilities of that to say, hey, if you use, XYZ system, it's going to integrate with Aloha or with, any other point of sale system out there. And then, QuickBooks or Sage or whatever you have on the back end, so that a new franchisee coming aboard, working with you isn't worrying about that year one, which is such a crucial time for a franchise, right?
Right. Yeah, no, good point. Okay, so is there one human capital management provider that does everything for a business?
Everyone will say they can, including ADP, but in reality, no one provider can do it efficiently, right? And so, ADP services, for example, they're broad, they're comprehensive. We can handle, any size type of business, but we know we don't do everything well for everybody. The way that we combated that, and to make sure that we are providing the best opportunities for our clients, is we created an app store. There are best of breed solutions out there for, in all different industries, from time and labor management, from expense management to HR best practices. And, now we're seeing a lot of, health protocol, risk and safety, best of breed solutions come up. And so what we do is create an app store, just like your phone has, where those solutions can come aboard and they can build an API and integrate into our system. And that way our clients that are maybe using us just for payroll can go out there and go, okay, well, what systems out there are going to really work well for my industry? And I know that they're going to speak well with my payroll and HR system. And we are the only ones that have something similar to that. There are others. But if you're looking and analyzing that, I would just go into it with the expectation that I know no one's going to do everything for me, but I need someone that can play well with others.
Okay, great. So, and maybe this is a question I should have asked you at the beginning, but we're spending some time on payroll and tracking and saving money. So payroll, we'll just call it payroll 101. What do we need to know and track to save money as when I say we, it's probably, business owners.
Yeah, absolutely. And I imagine there's a lot of your clients, franchisees that, they may be their first time actually owning a business coming into this. And so it's really helpful to know, like, what is payroll at its crux, and what am I responsible for? And so as an employer, you have certain employer tax responsibilities. Those include the employer portion of Social Security, which we covered in the Payroll Tax Deferral Program, right? Medicare. So I'll hop back. Employer portion, 6.25%. Medicare, 1.45%. That's where that, it's 7.65% of FICA that we talk about, right? Also, as an employer, you're responsible for federal unemployment, or FUTA. You might hear FUTA. What FUTA is that you're withholding 6% of every one of your employees' wages of their first $7,000 they make with you in a calendar year. So that has a cap, right? Once they've made 7,000 with you, that 6% gets capped and it gets paid, and that is filed on a year-end 940 form. The other unemployment insurance is your state unemployment insurance, and that has a rate and a wage threshold also, like FUTA does. So you'll hear SUTA and FUTA, that's federal unemployment tax, state unemployment tax. And what we talk about with state unemployment tax is that's your only controllable tax, right? So you can control some of your costs that way. And what we mean by that is how well you handle your employment practices and the unemployment claims that come your way can determine the rate in which the state assigns you every single year. So the better you control that rate will actually go down. For example, we're in Utah, right? That rate usually starts on a new business around 1.1% of employees' wages. In Utah, it's $33,000. But that rate over time can go down to as low as 0.1%. So if you can lower your entire state unemployment tax by 1 point, that's a significant ROI. And so it speaks again to the value of outsourcing. Most outsourced payroll providers are going to help control that with a couple of different mechanisms, and also fight unemployment claims on your behalf. And oftentimes what you'll see is the ROI just on controlling your unemployment is worth more than just the cost of outsourcing payroll itself.
Interesting. So, and you touched on it for just a second at the end there, but what are those things that lower the unemployment percentage?
Yeah, so it kind of starts with the claim, right? So if you get an unemployment claim that comes your way, you now have to approach and make a case for that claim, fight that claim. Well, what's going to help you fight that claim is having proper documentation, right? If you had to let somebody go, where are your write-ups? Where is your employee handbook? How did you, point back to the reason for that termination, back to the employment documents and practices that you have. So an employee handbook is a huge part of that. Job description is a huge part of that, and then consistent write-ups before just willy-nilly terminating an employee, right? So when you have that information, that helps you fight an unemployment claim that won't come your way, because lost unemployment claims is what really spikes that unemployment rate. The other thing that plays a part in that, and it's not really anything you can deal with, is just your industry. Every industry, a lot of unemployment rates are set based on industry base. So your contracting, your framing, your roofing, like they're going to have higher unemployment rates than others, and that also gets tied into your workers' comp e-modification number. But to keep it simple, the best way that you can control that is by having your proper HR documentation in place and a process, and then allow an outsourced provider to go to the, in Utah, for example, is the Department of Workforce Services, to approach them on your behalf to fight those claims for you.
So, yeah, you had mentioned, having the employee handbook and giving notices when people are kind of stepping out of line, so that they kind of had notice that they were not on probation, but close. So that they at least had a warning that their actions could lead to termination. Is that something, so ADP, how does that work in terms of, hey, I've got an employee, can you talk to them? What does that, and I imagine it's kind of depending on what program you choose, but let's suppose that you do outsource that portion of your HR. How involved is ADP with that process of getting the employee manual, and writing up employees and things like that?
Yeah, we can be as involved as you want us to, right? In HR, you have to have different service models based on the needs of an organization, right? A brand new business with 3, 4 employees probably doesn't need a fully outsourced HR, but you need a lot of resources at your disposal. And so our systems are built out to have a tech component with all the HR resources you would need, a fully customizable employee handbook. To sidebar a little bit on that, with franchise, we know that how important that is, because as a franchisor, you can't just give a handbook to a franchisee, right? There's co-employment issues that you run into that way. And so having a fully customized handbook per state, per location for your franchisees is very important. That's one of the things I would look for as a solution for your franchisees. But then as your business grows, there will be a need for not just a tech kind of HR self-help, but a people aspect to that too, right? And maybe your organization doesn't need a full-time HR representative, but just a dedicated HR individual, either virtually or on a quarterly basis, we can come in and offer assistance and help with not only the tactical stuff like we're talking about here, but some of the strategic things that the initiatives that you want to put in place. And so long way to answer your question, but we can build out an HR service model that makes sense and can evolve over time.
Okay. Well, and I'm sure some of the viewers are listening to this and saying, wow, there's a lot of things I didn't know, a lot of things that maybe I ought to look to, possibly an outsourced HR and payroll provider. Mm-hmm. But they may already have something in-house. And I mean, how difficult is it to transition to an outsourced provider?
Yeah, we see this every day, right? Clients, man, it's so painful to switch payroll systems. It's not, we need more help. It certainly can be painful. Absolutely, but it doesn't have to be. So the number one thing is just making sure that the individual that's helping you come aboard their new payroll system or HR system knows the reports necessary to do so. Now, I will tell you, January 1 is the easiest time to switch, right? All your taxes reset to zero, so there's no prior, what we call balances or prior payroll history that we need to load into the system. It's just employee data and some signatures, and you're good to go. So we'll say January 1 is always the easiest time to make a switch, which means you really want to be analyzing systems in November and December so that you have the right time to look through and make sure that there's a good fit for yourself. But you can always make a switch mid-year. It's just a matter of working with a system and solution that knows the reports they're going to need to make that transition really easy for you. And we do that every single day.
Okay. Well, that was going to be my follow-up question, is saying, okay, if someone were to contact you, they say, we want to switch over January 1, how much mm-hmm. time does ADP need to get things in place for January 1?
Yeah, it's a good question. So in our initial speaking with one another, I would say an hour to 2 hours to show the system, to do an analysis, to make a recommendation that's tailor fit for you. And then when you say, hey, it's go time, then our back office team loading documents 24 to 72 hours to build out it the way that it needs to be, and then get it ready for you to do your first payroll, whether that be the first Friday in January or January 1, whatever it may be. I always say 24 to 72 hours, depending on the complexity of your payroll deductions and codes and everything else that you might have.
Okay. Wow. All right. Well, that's simple enough. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I really appreciate your time. When we met, I don't know if it's last year or the year before, I was just really impressed. And I thought, wow, I would certainly trust my clients under your care. And I appreciate you coming on. I think you provided a lot of valuable information to employers, businesses in general. And we will put more information and links at the end of this that viewers can look at. And happy to put Jordan's information if you want to contact him. So thank you again for your time, and we will talk again soon.
Yeah, thank you. And I can share some information with you, the presidential memorandum, anything else that they want to cover on this.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.